Good evening and welcome to the SpaceX and Axiom Space Splashdown coverage of AX-2, the second crewed mission to the International Space Station by Axiom Space. I'm Kate Tice, Quality Systems Engineering Manager here at SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California.
And I'm Duke Brady, a multimedia specialist with Axiom Space based in Houston, Texas. Nearing 10 days in space, our crew spent 8 days aboard the ISS, and while on board, they covered more than 126 orbits and 3.3 million miles. And now we're in the final phase of our journey. Over the next hour, we will follow the return of Peggy Whitson, John Schaffner, Ali Al-Karni, Rayana Barnawi, as they splash down off the coast of Florida and conclude the AX-2 mission.
Now, we're hoping to bring you live views from our crew soon, but we don't have those views just yet due to ground station coverage. But since departing the International Space Station at 8:05 a.m. Pacific time, the crew had a brief off-duty period where they got to hang out a little bit before preparing the cabin for the final part of their journey home, and also put on or donned their spacesuits and completed successful suit leak checks. Now, over the last 11 hours, Dragon has been moving the vehicle into position for re-entry with a downhill phase burn, a short firing of Dragon's Draco thrusters to lower the spacecraft's altitude in advance of returning to Earth. That's what you see there with that animation on your screen. Next up will be jettisoning the trunk, which is that cylindrical unpressurized part. Once that trunk detaches, we will use the forward bulkhead thrusters to perform the deorbit burn. Of course, re-entry burn follows thereafter, and then we will see the drogue parachutes followed by the main parachutes deploying, and then finally with splashdown. Now, this animation shows us splashing down in the Atlantic Ocean, but we are actually going to be re-entering and splashing down on the Gulf side. We are targeting a splashdown location of Panama City. So just a quick note there about that location.
Right. And when it does splash down, SpaceX knows exactly where Dragon is expected to land, with recovery teams pre-positioned in the area. These teams are trained to get to the Dragon spacecraft quickly, secure it, and then hoist it aboard the main recovery vessel. From there, crews will open the hatch and help Peggy, John, Ali, and Rayana out of Dragon Freedom.
And it'll be a super exciting moment. That will be the first breath of fresh air that they've had in 10 days.
Absolutely. I'm sure it's going to smell different than station. The AX-2 mission has been remarkable from start to finish in so many ways, really. This mission is the culmination of years of hard work between both government and private entities to expand opportunities for countries, institutions, industries, and individuals around the world to partake in meaningful science, research, manufacturing, and STEAM-related activities in space. And this crew has certainly stayed busy with many of these kinds of efforts while on station.
Yeah, let's take a moment to properly introduce our crew. The AX-2 mission is commanded by retired NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson. Born and raised in Beaconsfield, Iowa, she was inspired along with the world when she watched the Apollo 11 crew walk on the moon. She has since become the most experienced American astronaut and one of the most decorated. Prior to this mission, Whitson flew 3 long-duration missions to the ISS, accruing more time in space than any U.S. astronaut and more than any woman in the world, a cool 665 days. A record she just extended on this mission to 674 days. Now, not only does she serve as the commander for this mission, but Peggy also serves as the director of human spaceflight for Axiom Space.
The pilot for AX-2 is private astronaut John Schaffner. Born in Alaska and raised in Kentucky, Schaffner has become the first Alaskan to go to space. He is a STEAM education advocate, business pioneer, and long-life space enthusiast. A pilot since the age of 17, John has over 8,500 flight hours, holding commercial, instrument, single-engine, and multi-engine ratings in land and sea aircraft, as well as helicopter. As an athlete, John has years of competitive experience in water skiing, cycling, whitewater kayaking, hang gliding, skydiving, and base jumping. Throughout this mission, John has invested a lot of his time in STEAM education activities aimed at empowering educators and inspiring teachers.
Representing the Saudi Space Commission and serving as a mission specialist, Ali Al-Karni was born in March 1992 in Sabat Al Alaya, Saudi Arabia. Ali is fluent in English as well as his native Arabic. As an Air Force captain, Ali has 12 years of experience flying on multiple aircraft, primarily on the F-15 SA in service to the Royal Saudi Air Force. Ali graduated with a Bachelor of Aerospace Science degree in 2013 from King Faisal Air Academy in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. During this mission, Ali performed a myriad of events and research, including the biodata EEG measurement and stellar stem cells Kermit operations.
Also representing the Saudi Space Commission, and now the first Saudi woman to go to space, Rihanna Barnawi was born in September 1988 in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Rihanna has a master's degree in biomedical sciences from Al Faisal University in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and a bachelor's degree in biomedical sciences from Otago University in Dunedin, New Zealand. She is fluent in English and Turkish as well as her native Arabic. She has been a research lab technician since 2013 in the Stem Cell and Tissue Re-Engineering Program at King Faisal Specialist Hospital and Research Center located in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And this week, she spent a large portion of her time working in the Life Sciences Glove Box, conducting stem cell research in microgravity. And there you have it, the AX2 crew. This really is such a wonderful, amazing group, and we are eager to reconnect with them and hear their stories firsthand once they get back home to Houston.
Now, like we mentioned before, we are hoping to bring you live views of the Dragon capsule momentarily. Now, I do want to note that a few minutes ago, the SpaceX teams did pull go for deorbit burn. So that's basically the next big step that we have. Now, at the moment, Dragon is doing a couple of things autonomously, meaning it's doing it all by itself. It's isolating the thermal control system fluid loops from the radiator. This system is what will help keep the internal temperature of Dragon temperate for the crew during re-entry. And then after that, we will see the claw separate. That claw connects the trunk to the capsule, and it delivers power, telemetry, and fluids. And that claw separation is the first step in that trunk separation. Of course, we have to separate that trunk, or jettison it really, in order to expose the heat shield, which is located at the bottom of the capsule. And so once that...
Delayed call, deorbit sequence start. Copy.
All right, so there that call, just letting us know that deorbit burn, which will last for about 13 minutes, is now underway. We are right now utilizing the 4 Draco thrusters on the forward bulkhead, meaning they're basically at the top of the capsule, right near where the nose cone is located, and also near the where the the forward hatch is located, which is what is used to dock to the International Space Station. So those 4 Draco thrusters are firing. That will last for about 13 minutes. Once that's complete, we will close the nose cone, and once that nose cone is closed, we will basically be ready. The Dragon will be physically configured for re-entry. Now, we are expecting today to have a loss of signal, or LOS, and that basically is a lot of friction building up on the exterior of the capsule as it is re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, and basically resulting in a buildup of super hot plasma. Now, we will be flowing cooled nitrox, or nitrogen oxygen.
Nominal trunk jettison.
Great news.
Draggy copy.
So there on your screen, SpaceX Mission Control, and in the left corner there, that is our crew operations and resources engineer. And I mentioned before that we had our deorbit burn underway. I got ahead of myself. We just heard the call out for that claw separation, meaning the trunk will be up next to deorbit. Will be up next to be jettisoned, and then we will step into that deorbit burn. On your screen there, SpaceX Core Michael Blasco, there in the left corner. The SpaceX. Oh, and there we have our first views of the Axiom-2 crew. We can see their visors are up.
That's great. We have Commander Peggy Whitson in the foreground, now on the left of your screen, and John Schaffner, the pilot, on the right.
So I love this view where we can actually see their screens. If you look at the screen that's on the left-hand side, in the top right corner of that left-hand display, we can actually see a graphic that will illustrate which Draco thrusters are firing when. They will illuminate with a flash of light. This is a great view of all 4 crew members. Everybody looks pretty chill.
Yeah. Well, they've trained for this. They've put a lot of time in preparing for all of these moments, and I think it shows right now that they are prepared. We get a good view of our mission specialists on the left, Rayana Barnawi, and on the far right, Ali Al-Karni, with, again, pilot John Schaffner in the left center and Commander Peggy Whitson in the right center seat.
So once again, if you've just joined us, the crew, as you can see, in Dragon Freedom. They are on their way home. They have just separated the trunk, so the heat shield is now exposed, the heat shield being an important element of our re-entry method. And then coming up, we will have the deorbit burn. This burn will last about 13 minutes. Then we will have atmospheric entry, and as I mentioned, we will have a brief loss of signal, or LOS. And then once we, at that point in time, we should be able to hopefully see Dragon. This is a night landing, so we are targeting a landing off the coast of Florida in the Gulf of Mexico near Panama City. So I love nighttime splashdowns because
yes.
Even folks that are on land from, not necessarily just near Panama City, but from areas farther away too, can see Dragon streaking across the sky like this gorgeous comet.
You mentioned that plasma that does affect the communications and causes that LOS, and some of us have seen video of that from inside the capsule. That plasma is so bright burning on the outside. It's really fascinating. As
I mentioned before, there's basically a buildup of friction that occurs around the exterior of the capsule while we are re-entering the Earth's atmosphere because we're going so fast. That atmosphere is actually helping us by helping to slow the capsule down significantly prior to the parachute deploy. But yeah, that results in some plasma buildup on the exterior of the capsule. And the crew stays nice and cool inside. We flow nitrox, which is nitrogen-oxygen mixture. Same stuff that's used in scuba tanks. We flow that into the cabin as well as directly into their suits to help keep everybody comfortable. The temperatures on the outside of Dragon can go above 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. So the capsule works hard to keep the crew safe, and ultimately that friction is really helping us to slow the vehicle down. So the crew is now standing by for the deorbit burn. As I mentioned, this will last for about 13 minutes. And we will be utilizing Dragon's 4 forward Draco thrusters. Those are located near the nose cone. So once that's complete, we can close the nose cone. And the deorbit burn is now in progress. As I mentioned before, this burn is expected to last for about 13 minutes. Quick recap. We, just within the last 10 minutes, Dragon jettisoned its trunk and initiated that deorbit burn just a minute or two ago. On the view where we have, where we're looking between pilot John Schaffner and Commander Peggy Whitson's shoulders, we can actually see those Draco thrusters firing on their display screens.
I love being able to see that. I'm sure it gives them another, layer of confidence. It's probably great, even though it's an autonomously operating vehicle. Oh, there we go. There's another shot of it. It's nice to have that visual reference.
The crew appreciates it as well. And then the center screen showing where they are in their trajectory home as well. Now, this deorbit burn is the last time that those 4 forward Draco thrusters will be firing. Dragon has not yet entered the Earth's atmosphere. This deorbit burn is basically what lines the vehicle up and puts it on its final trajectory home to the landing site, which, as I mentioned before, is off the coast of Florida near Panama City. And as we can see, the crew using their screens to keep tabs on the burn duration, the Draco thruster firings, and then, as I mentioned before, trajectory details such as entry angle, capsule perigee, how much distance remaining until deorbit burn termination. As I mentioned before, Dragon is autonomous, meaning it's flying itself. So right now, all the crew has to do is stay strapped in their seats and keep tabs on things. Once it's time for our crew to splash down back on planet Earth, they'll be heading to one of our 7 targeted sites supported by SpaceX. All of these sites are located off the coast of Florida, either in the Gulf of Mexico or the Atlantic Ocean. Spreading these supported sites across multiple locations helps to maximize the opportunities to return for this mission and also for future crews, lowering the chance that we'll have to wave off due to bad weather. Since Dragon is capable of splashdown on either side of the Florida Panhandle, we have 2 identical and fully equipped recovery vessels that are ready to support, one in the Gulf of Mexico, which is Megan, and the other in the Atlantic Ocean, which is Shannon.
In the lead up to today, SpaceX selected primary and alternate splashdown locations off the coast of Florida. This selection process takes into account a lot of different variables, including what landing sites are available and which have favorable weather. Today, our primary landing site gets the crew home off the coast of Panama City, Florida, in the Gulf of Mexico. For return, we'll be looking at a number of weather items. Some of the obvious ones are no rain or chance of lightning in the recovery zone, both for the safety of the crew inside the capsule and the recovery teams on the water. But we're also looking for wind speeds less than 15 feet per second, or about 10 miles per hour, and relatively calm seas so we can safely execute recovery operations, which include landing a helicopter on the recovery ship to fly our crew back to shore.
Yeah, so as you can see, there's a number of variables and criteria that come into play, and ultimately they all help ensure safety for both the crew on board as well as for the recovery teams. But in terms of the weather conditions that we have tonight, they look awesome. For these operations, SpaceX closely coordinates with the United States Coast Guard to establish a safety zone, and that's to ensure public safety for the safety of those involved in the recovery operations, as I mentioned, of course, the crew on board the returning spacecraft. Multiple notices are issued to the mariners in advance and during recovery operations, and Coast Guard patrol boats are deployed to discourage boaters from entering the splashdown zones.
Right, and we really want to stress to the public the need to respect this safety zone. Recovering a spacecraft from the water is a very hazardous operation, and any other boats interfering in the area not only increase the risk to the astronauts in the capsule and the teams working to recover them from the water, but to themselves as well. So for the safety of the crew as well as your safety, we recommend that you sit back and watch as we'll be bringing you the best possible views of our astronauts homecoming.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add on to that, though, is that if you do live in Florida, or along the Gulf Coast, head outside. You should be able to see the Dragon capsule streaking through the night sky.
Absolutely.
Now, as you might imagine, our crew, Peggy Whitson, John Schaffner, Ali Al-Karni, and Rayana Barnawi, they've gone through extensive training for their mission, including this final phase of re-entry. Each crew member has between 700 and 1,000 logged hours since mid-2021 of that time dedicated to learning the SpaceX protocols, the International Space Station systems, and to prepare for their respective research portfolios. Now, as we continue to wait word on the deorbit burn, let's share some of the range of these efforts with you now.
Private astronaut training is quite rigorous. To prepare for the AX2 crew mission, our team at SpaceX, their teams at SpaceX, had to spend the last several months teaching the crew about orbital mechanics, right?
That's absolutely right. They also learned how to live in microgravity and running simulations of full missions from inside our Dragon training capsules. The training program includes nearly 100 different lessons covering all aspects of the flight.
And list goes on. You guys did such a great job with our crew here. They actually had so many other people they got to visit too. The X2 crew spent time in simulators like this centrifuge, and it's experiencing higher G-forces. And so kind of complementary to this, the crew also participated in a zero-G parabolic flight that simulated the lack of G-forces. But aside from simulating gravitational forces they will experience, they also underwent altitude training in a hyperbaric chamber. So this can simulate high altitude and hypoxia so that they can identify not only their own symptoms, but the symptoms of their crewmates if they need to recognize those. They also spent time at Johnson Space Center in the mock-up facilities training for this mission. So to spend 8 days living on board the ISS, they spent time learning from the mission controllers, experts in safety and emergency ISS procedures, and as well as the essentials to living aboard the orbiting laboratory. Things like how to heat up your food, where to find the equipment you need. The goal is to be able to confidently complete every task on their timeline, but also be contributing members for the space station as a whole with the other astronauts as they carry out their duties. And so to that end, they also went to Cologne, Germany, and Scuba, Japan. They trained with ESA and JAXA to qualify on the European Space Agency's Columbus module, as you'll see here. The ESA instructors shared many of the systems and operations procedures, as well as some of the daily tasks and emergency protocols. Separately to qualify for the Japanese exploration module, the crew traveled to Scuba, Japan to learn from instructors at the Japanese Aerospace Exploration Agency. As you can imagine, international collaboration is a constant throughout this mission. So it's one thing to learn the systems of the ISS, but it's just as important to understand how to live and work as a team in a shared space. And so this team spent 5 days training in the Human Exploration Research Analog, or HERA, at the Johnson Space Center. This is a confined experience that's designed to isolate the crew to build cohesiveness and teamwork. This experience included a chance to simulate work and research procedures, rehearse outreach efforts, and even respond to mock emergencies, all while living in close quarters and unable to leave the facility. Pretty exciting stuff.
And of course, it all leads up to what they're experiencing now. They are going through what we refer to as the re-entry phase of the mission. Right now, there's a live view within our Dragon capsule of the AX2 crew. They have spent time rehearsing what happens here. And as we mentioned before, they're mostly just monitoring and keeping tabs on progress. But one thing that they did train extensively on is the egress process from the capsule. You know, they are returning from 10 days in space. Their body might feel a little different, to help ensure that nobody injures themselves when they're egressing or exiting the capsule. They have practiced that here in Hawthorne with the teams, just to help make sure that they know what order they're going to go in and who to lean on for help as they step through the side hatch once again.
Right, because everything is so perfectly orchestrated.
Absolutely.
As we talked about, the team staging for the rescue, every crew is within 3 miles of these potential splashdown zones. They know what they're doing, and they've spent time practicing this.
Absolutely.
Great shot of our crew still. That's Commander Peggy Whitson in the bottom of your screen. John Schaffner, the pilot, a little further back, and just out of view are the mission specialists, Ali Al-Karni, hidden below us to the left, and Rayana Barnawi far at the top of the screen there.
Now the deorbit burn should be wrapping up in about 30 seconds. And we can see exactly as the crew sees on their displays, that center screen showing them their trajectory details, as well as what step of the burn or what step of the mission we are in. So you can actually, looks like it says there deorbit burn, which makes sense. That's where we're at right now. After deorbit burn completes, we will close the nose cone. That will be the final physical change of the Dragon capsule prior to re-entry. Of course, the nose cone is, as the name suggests, it's the cone at the top of the capsule. And while it's been in space, it has been open to help expose those forward bulkhead Draco thrusters, as well as
Deorbit burn complete. Performance nominal. Nose cone closure initiated.
Dragon copy.
Oh, that's great news.
We love nominal.
So as I was talking about, that nose cone is now going to be shut. In the background, Dragon will also be inhibiting those forward bulkhead Draco thrusters that we just used to complete the deorbit burn. That ensures that it's safe to latch the nose cone shut for re-entry. Also, the vehicle has initiated the nitrox suit purge. This will help keep the crew cool and comfortable during re-entry, which looks like is coming up in about 25 minutes. At this point, as we just heard, nose cone is closing and protecting that forward hatch for will be protecting the forward hatch throughout the re-entry phase. And the crew using their screens to monitor the progress. And actually, that's a live view of the nose cone closing in. This is one of the cameras near that forward hatch, and that is the nose cone closing down on top of it.
I love that shot. That's so great.
So once again, this is where the forward hatch is located, which is what is utilized to dock with the International Space Station, as well as those forward bulkhead thrusters. There's 4 of them, and we utilize those for the deorbit burn, which for those of you that have just joined us, we have just completed that deorbit burn. That's basically what puts Dragon on the final trajectory home. So we're now committed, we're locked into the Panama City splashdown location. Our recovery vessel, Megan, is standing by, waiting to scoop Dragon up and lift it onto its deck. But right now, the crew, which we will be experiencing a loss of signal with the crew, that will last for only a few minutes. And that's not until like 20 minutes away or so. But we do expect that to happen because as Dragon re-enters the Earth's atmosphere, there's a lot of friction building up on the outside of it, on the exterior, and that results in plasma buildup, which is super hot. The external temperatures can reach about 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit, so it's pretty hot.
That's up there.
But the crew stays super comfortable. We are flushing the cabin with that cool nitrox air, and we're also flowing it through their suits as well. So they're going to stay comfortable. I think the only downside to the re-entry phase is because of that plasma buildup, you can't really look outside.
Yeah, right. And maybe the coming back to gravity, it's probably a little bittersweet once you've been on orbit.
Yeah. I can only imagine. So the first views that we will have of Dragon will be from our thermal cameras that will be tracking Dragon, as I've mentioned before. If you've tuned in and you lived along the Gulf Coast, you should head outside because you will probably be able to see Dragon streaking across the night sky. Now we're standing by for confirmation that the nose cone is closed. Looks like we're tracking that to occur here in the next couple of seconds. So that's closing. The hooks will basically lock. There's 2 sets of hooks that will lock the nose cone in place. The same hooks that have to open up in order to open the nose cone. Crazy to think that that was just 10 days ago that we were talking about nose cone opening when the AX-2 crew launched. So we're now standing by for confirmation of that nose cone closure. All right, so it looks like both sets of hooks are confirmed to be closed, so that nose cone is locked into place. Now, as we begin the second half of entry, Dragon is now beginning to flush nitrox into the cabin and continuing to top off the AX-2 crew's suits with that cool air. Again, that's what will allow the cabin temperature to remain comfortable while the external temperatures reach 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, the heat shield, which is the structure that was exposed when we jettisoned the trunk from the Dragon capsule, that heat shield is pointing forward, which basically leads the capsule to the landing site. That heat shield is comprised of PICA 3.0, which stands for Phenolic Impregnated Carbon Ablator. The first gen PICA was actually first developed by NASA for studying and sampling comets within our solar system. SpaceX partnered with NASA to develop PICA X, which was the second generation product used on all Dragon 1 cargo resupply missions that successfully resupplied the space station on 20 missions. And then PICA 3.0 was developed specifically for use on Dragon 2 crew and cargo missions with enhanced structural and thermal properties that optimized the heat shield and drove down costs and mass. So the remainder of the Crew Dragon capsule is comprised primarily of SpaceX proprietary ablative material. It's another class of thermal protection, which is lighter weight versus the PICA, and it also protects the underlying composite structure during reentry to ensure structural capabilities are maintained. So that's the white stuff on the side of the Dragon capsule. Now, while Crew Dragon will experience temperatures well over 3,000 degrees, I said before, it gets about 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit during peak reentry conditions. The characteristics of the TPS, which stands for Thermal Protection System, coupled with the environmental control and life support system in the pressurized interior, all of that will ensure that the AX-2 crew will stay cool and comfortable during all phases of reentry through splashdown, and also helps ensure that we can reuse this capsule on future missions as well.
Yeah, love it. Well, if you watch the launch webcast of AX-2, you know that one of the goals of Axiom Space is to find new ways to promote and foster the creation of space-themed art. Over the course of this mission, Axiom Space 3 has been releasing digital collections from artists on our Web3 platform. Axiom Space 3 is a token-gated community network that allows members to collect premium, space-inspired collectibles and engage with astronauts, space technology professionals, and Web3 entrepreneurs building at the intersection of deep tech industries. For this mission, Axiom Space and ArtBlocks Engine announced a groundbreaking partnership that will see the launch of a space-infused NFT collection.
Nose cone secured for entry.
Oh, nice on the loops there.
Dragon copy.
That is a good update.
That nose cone is locked and loaded.
Locked and loaded. And back to the NFT collection. This is a piece called Imagine by Nadia Bremer. Nadia Bremer is an art block artist, astronomer, and data visualization designer. This new ArtBlocks Engine collection features a 222-piece algorithmically generated collection that showcases imaginary maps of the stars with unique constellations. To make this collection even more unique, the digital art has been initiated from the ISS by AX-2 Commander Peggy Whitson during this mission. You can grab one of these beautiful digital star maps beginning on May 31st at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Additionally, the AX-2 digital art collection featured work by Thank You X, an American artist out of Los Angeles, California. Thank You X sent up a piece of his physical art canvas to space titled Urge for Perfection and released a commemorative NFT called AX-2, which celebrates this mission and the canvas going to space. This NFT was available throughout the mission with sales closing at Splashdown. These collaborations with digital artists and brands bring a new level of creativity and inclusivity to the commercial space industry. For more on this and all of our digital collectible activities, visit nft.axiomspace.com. At Axiom Space, we are hard at work building the next destination in low Earth orbit. Axiom Space is being designed as a true continuation and evolution of the International Space Station. With so much knowledge gained over the last 20 plus years, Axiom Space's goal is to build upon the successes and lessons learned over that time while expanding access to low Earth orbit for more countries, institutions, industries, and individuals than ever before. With Axiom Station currently under construction here, we have an update for you on the growth and development of what we intend and how we are going to be the first commercial space station.
We are building the world's first commercial space station, one element at a time.
We think that what we're doing is for everyone, everywhere. This is a global endeavor. Our partner, Thales Alenia in Italy, is in the finishing stages of building the first module, the first pressure vessel.
We are here in the integration and manufacturing area of Thales Alenia Space. Here we have the two cons that will be part of the module. Is also the gate to the module to come in and to come out. The very big cylinder that will be the core of the module. Just to have an idea of the dimension of the real module, you can see me compared with the structure. On these ports, all the additional modules will be docked. This is the most complex piece of the entire Axiom module.
We're on pace to build a human-rated spaceship faster than anybody's ever built one.
When we look at our roadmap, we look to see how we can double its capability every 5 years.
It requires a lot of different talents and a lot of different engineering backgrounds, so we've really expanded the team.
I'm working on the time-sensitive network aspect of the space station. So that's the network, have all the flight computers synchronized and actually do the thruster firing at the perfect time.
So this is the command trailer. We're able to control our test stand, which enables us to vary our set pressures, our flow rates into the thruster in order to collect performance data at various OFs and chamber pressure conditions. It's always a blast to come out here, set everything up, and start lighting rockets off.
Behind us, we have the carbon dioxide removal subassembly. We're going to be creating the most integrated ecosystem that has ever been put into space thus far, which is a really cool thing to be able to say.
I fabricate PC boards and cables and harnessing. This is a life-critical job, and you want to make sure you do the best possible job.
"15 to 20 years from now, we're going to be surrounded by objects that we can't imagine how we live without, that were manufactured in space." I think there's another promise too, and that's why I'm really excited about the AX-2 crew. There is this effect that people have gone to space and had. This is called the overview effect. Many people have come back profoundly changed because of their experience. And I think the more people that we can have that see the world as the whole world, the better off we all are.
Now we have some good news. SpaceX core Michael Blasco gave a quick debrief to the AX-2 crew to let them know the final timing estimations on their re-entry. So we have an updated estimated time for that loss of signal. This will last about 7 minutes, and we're expecting that to occur GMT 0251 and end at 0258. So again, lasting 7 minutes. We did hear that weather conditions are, direct quote, outstanding. So that is excellent. Once again, it sounds like this will be super visible across the Gulf of Mexico. Once again, we are targeting a landing at around Panama City. So head outside and watch it.
It's going to look awesome. Well, while we wait for more updates, here's a fun list the teams put together about the mission. 15 things to know. A few things that we want to know about this mission. The crew conducted over 20 microgravity research projects. Some of the research conducted on the mission included studying immune dysfunction in tumor organoid models that can help predict and prevent cancer, investigating how commercial spaceflight crew members adapt to microgravity, and exploring how weather modification works in low gravity conditions. The crew held STEAM events with students all over the world. More specifically, they conducted a series of live science demonstrations with students on Earth through amateur ham radio events, a student art competition from space, and engaging in student-led projects with universities like MIT. Well docked to the ISS, they orbited the Earth 126 times and traveled a mere 3.33 million miles. AX-2 was the first commercial mission with both private and government-sponsored astronauts. Peggy Whitson is now the first female commander of a private space mission, adding to her accomplishment as the first female commander of the ISS and extending her record for the longest cumulative time in space by an American astronaut to 674 days across her 4 flights. Ali Al-Qarni and Rihanna Barnawi are the first Saudi astronauts to visit the ISS, and Rihanna Barnawi is the first Saudi female to go to space. John Schaffner became the first person from the state of Alaska and first Fairbanksian to fly to space. Axiom Space's Mission Control Center in Houston became the 12th ground segment partner for the International Space Station. For the first time, induced pluripotent stem cells were manufactured in space by astronauts. By studying stem cells in space, we can address the challenges that currently limit us as we study these cells in regenerative medicine across low Earth orbit and down here on Earth. I have a nice live view of our crew in the capsule. Again, you see our mission specialist, Rihanna Barnawi, on the left, followed by pilot John Schaffner, Commander Peggy Whitson, and on the far right, mission specialist Ali Al-Qarni. On that far left, Rihanna Barnawi conducted 7 consecutive days of life science glove box operations during her 8-day docked mission time frame. So plenty of fun firsts and amazing work done by this crew during their mission. Here's another fun one. Our zero-G indicator, named GG, continued the tradition of having the microgravity indicator inside the spacecraft to provide a visual reference for when the crew has reached weightlessness. As the 5th crew member of AX-2, GG's mission is to inspire children around the world to learn about space. GG is a Build-A-Bear teddy bear wearing Axiom's AX-EMU spacesuit, just like the ones that NASA astronauts will wear on future missions to the moon. AX-2 is a precursor for Axiom Station. These missions are an important step along the journey of constructing the world's first commercial space station. AX-2 also did some tech demos on board. The AX-2 crew successfully conducted 2 Axiom space-led technology demonstrations on the space station, which are trailblazers for the next generation of video communication in space and imagery downlink. Returning with them in SpaceX Dragon Freedom is actually more than 300 pounds of cargo and important data that will impact our understanding of human physiology on Earth and on orbit.
As of right now, we can see AX-2 crew are in their suits, in their seats. They're continuing to follow progress on their tablets and the display screen above their head. We have an anticipated loss of signal coming up in about 12 minutes, a little bit, almost 13 minutes. Or excuse me, that LOS will occur in 6 minutes, and we expect that to last for 7 minutes total. And we have an anticipated splashdown time of 8:04 p.m. Pacific, 11:04 p.m. Eastern Time. So up next will be that communications blackout period. This happens every crew mission that we have as they re-enter the Earth's atmosphere. The exterior of the capsule works really hard to, basically it's encountering a lot of friction as it is re-entering the Earth's atmosphere, and that actually helps the capsule slow down significantly before we deploy the parachutes. Now the suits that you see them wearing now, they are fully customized and fitted for each crew member. We can see their visors are now down in the locked position.
And SpaceX Dragon crew entry prep is complete.
Copy that, Dragon. We see your visors are down, restraints are secure, and satchels are also secure. 5 minutes to expected LOS. We will see you on the other side at 0258 Zulu.
0258 Zulu.
Good readback.
Now, for those of you that have been following along, you know that the visors come down for the more dynamic parts of the flight, which of course would be, re-entry would be considered one of those. Those helmets that they have are actually 3D printed, which is, personally, I think, pretty awesome. The outer layer of the spacesuit is flame resistant. They wear hearing protection, both during ascent and re-entry. And you know, the spacesuits look good, but more importantly, they keep the crew safe through all phases of the flight. Now, as we mentioned before, we are targeting a splashdown off the Gulf Coast of Florida near Panama City. Expected splashdown time is 11:04 p.m. Eastern, 8:04 p.m. Pacific. So that's coming up here in just over 16 minutes. The next thing we have coming up in about 3 minutes is the anticipated loss of signal, or LOS, as we hear it referred to on comms. That's a live view of SpaceX Mission Control here in Hawthorne, California.
AX-2 is Axiom's second mission with SpaceX, and there are 2 more planned, AX-3 and AX-4. It will also be in SpaceX vehicles. Back at Axiom headquarters, Michael Lopez Alegria, our chief astronaut, is our commander for AX-3, and he is already in training. Mike Lopez Alegria, also known as MLA. And so the AX-3 mission is already underway.
So we're now coming up to the anticipated loss of signal, or LOS. Once again, this is expected to last for 7 minutes. All right, so at this point, we are entering the communications blackout period, or LOS, loss of signal. This will last for 7 minutes due to plasma formation around the exterior of the spacecraft. During this time, no vehicle telemetry is received by mission control or the recovery team, and no external commanding of the vehicle or voice communication is possible. As a reminder, Dragon is designed to fly itself and continues to autonomously use Draco thrusters to orient itself during the re-entry phase. During re-entry, the vehicle will be slowing down from orbital velocity, which is about 17,500 miles per hour, and it will basically continue to decrease a lot of that deceleration occurring during this atmospheric re-entry. And then the top temperature for Dragon, as I said earlier, exterior temperatures reach about 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. So the crew remains comfortable as we are flowing nitrox, cool nitrox air, both into their suits as well as into Dragon's interior cabin. So while it gets toasty on the outside, and we will see the evidence of that once we get lights shining on Dragon and it's lifted up onto the deck of our recovery vessel, Megan, we will actually be able to see the ablative material on the exterior of the capsule. It'll have some charring on it, which is a good indication that it worked.
I like to call them toasted marshmallows. That's the kind of brown patina it reminds me of.
So once again, we are in the anticipated communications blackout period. We have about 4 minutes remaining. Total runtime for this blackout period is 7 minutes, so we're roughly about halfway through. In previous crew returns, we have sometimes regained communication faster than expected, so probably in a couple minutes we might hear SpaceX core Michael Blasco start hailing the crew to see if we can regain those communications. Now, our first views of Dragon, hopefully we'll be able to bring them to you soon, but they will be the thermal cameras that will be tracking Dragon's re-entry. If you live on the Gulf Coast, it should be visible, streaking across the night sky. Once again, we have an anticipated splashdown time of 11:04 p.m. Eastern, so about 10 minutes from now. Now at about 18,000 feet in altitude, the drogue parachutes will deploy. And after that, around 6,000 feet altitude, we will have the main parachute deployment. And there's our first live view of Dragon Freedom with the Axiom-2 crew. This is coming from one of our thermal tracking cams. I believe this might actually be the WB plane, the WB-57 plane from NASA. This is a thermal imaging tracking cam. About 2 minutes remaining until we have an anticipated until when we anticipate being able to restore communications with the crew. Once again, the buildup of plasma on the outside of the capsule prevents any communications going to or coming from the Dragon capsule. You can see SpaceX engineers there on console monitoring Dragon's progress as it is autonomously steering itself to the splashdown site off the coast of Florida. Once again, we're targeting a landing near Panama City in the Gulf of Mexico.
And a quite excited small crowd outside of mission control here at SpaceX. You can see them there awaiting the return of the 10th mission of crew members on board Dragon.
Yeah, and we're well underway with our second shift operations here at SpaceX headquarters. So we can see some folks, as you can definitely see they're gathering, awaiting more views of. Oh, there's a beautiful shot. We can see that capsule now streaking through the night sky. I believe this camera view might be coming from the recovery vessel or from one of the aerial assets that we have in the area. We're now coming up to the end of the expected loss of signal. So we're now moving toward AOS, or acquisition of signal.
That's incredible.
And we should probably hear SpaceX core Michael Blasco start hailing.
Dragon, SpaceX, comm check.
We have you loud and clear.
Likewise, good to have you back. Expect automated chute deployment.
Dragon Cap.
All right, great news there. Those communications have been restored with the Axiom crew. The next event we have coming up.
GPS has converged. Expect nominal altitude for drogue chute deploy.
Copy. Nominal altitude for drogue chute deploy with GPS.
Now we expect those drogues to deploy when the Dragon capsule is around 18,000 feet in altitude. And we're roughly a minute and a half away from deployment. Another view coming to us from the WB-57 chaser plane. These are thermal images.
Brace for drogue window.
Now standing by for deployment of the drogue parachutes. These will be the first of two sets of parachutes that will deploy to help further slow down the Dragon capsule. Should see those drogue those drogues deploy any second now. Looks like they're going now.
Visual on 2 healthy drogues.
Dragon copy. 2 healthy drogues.
All right, great news there. Those 2 drogue parachutes have deployed. That helps to stabilize the Dragon capsule and provide that initial deceleration via parachute. Up next, we will have the main parachutes deploy. Vehicle velocity at main chute deployment is about 119 miles per hour, and they deploy between 6,500 and 6,000 feet. And there we can see those drogues pulling away, exposing the main parachutes. There are 4 main parachutes on the Dragon capsule, and it looks like those are now expanding, that reefing.
Main chute descent rate nominal.
And Dragon copies. Nominal chute.
Now, this is a really cool view from the Dragon capsule. That's actually from the basin where the main parachutes...
1 kilometer.
1,000 meters, copy.
It's a view from where those main parachutes were just located. From this point on, we will hear Commander Peggy Whitson call out the altitude of the Dragon capsule. So we just heard her call out 1 kilometer, meaning 1 kilometer above the ocean surface.
$800.
Copy, 800.
So at this point in time, we can see we have 4 healthy main parachutes have deployed for the Axiom-2 crew. In a matter of minutes, they have gone from 17,500 miles per hour down to roughly now about 70 miles per hour.
600.
Copy,
even less
600.
than that. When the main parachutes were deployed, they were going about 119 miles per hour. And by the time that they actually land in the water, it's about 10 miles per hour, thereabouts.
$400.
Copy, 400 meters.
$200. Cruise brace.
Copy, 200 and brace for splashdown.
Right, standing by for splashdown of the Axiom-2 crew.
AX2 is back on Earth.
As you can see on your screen, visual confirmation for splashdown of our Dragon spacecraft. Dragon Freedom has returned home with the AX2 crew.
SpaceX sees splashdown and mains cut. At this time, you are go for procedure 4.800.
And we're in that 4.800 splashdown.
SpaceX sees this.
We're in water uprighting.
SpaceX sees the same. Peggy, John, Ali, Rayana, on behalf of SpaceX, welcome home.
Well, in SpaceX, we would like to tell you that was a phenomenal ride. We really enjoyed all of it. You are the best.
As you can see on your screen, the SpaceX recovery team and vessels have been waiting for Dragon splashdown, which they made on time just 1 minute ago at 8:04 p.m. Pacific. They will now make their way to the splashdown location. The teams have been ready and waiting about 3 nautical miles away. So,
and SpaceX Dragon, we feel like we're probably in stable 1.
Copy, stable 1.
All right, that communication there, just Commander Peggy Whitson basically estimating what position Dragon is in, depending on how it lands. Generally speaking, it lands upright, excuse me, which is we refer to as stable 1. But the teams it'll take them about 30 minutes to make their way to our crew inside Dragon. As you can see there on your screen, recovery teams now making their way to the Dragon spacecraft. We are excitedly awaiting their recovery. Dragon has already autonomously completed several steps to safe itself following splashdown. We can see lots of bright lights there by the teams both in the water and in the air to help ensure that the recovery team can see what they're doing.
Absolutely. And for those of you just joining us, the return of AX-2 has gone smoothly so far. Dragon Freedom successfully re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, followed by deployment of its parachutes to slow the spacecraft down to a gentle 15 miles per hour. Dragon successfully splashed down in the Gulf of Mexico at 8:04 p.m. Pacific time, right on time, off the coast of Panama City, Florida, in the Gulf of Mexico, and we are now awaiting Dragon's recovery.
Yeah. Now, upon detection of landing, Dragon automatically releases the main parachutes, and that's to help prevent the wind from pulling on the spacecraft. The Dragon then automatically saves any pyrotechnics still present on the vehicle and may...
Dragon, SpaceX is go for recovery personnel to approach. Expect personnel alongside in approximately 1 minute.
We'll be expecting them, thank you.
SpaceX core Michael Blasco just giving the crew a heads up that they can expect some folks to reach the Dragon capsule. So those are the fast boats that we see now approaching. The view that we have now is actually coming to us from our recovery vessel Megan, which is also making its way to the Dragon capsule, but it doesn't go as fast as the fast boats do, so it takes it a little bit longer. So at this point on, we will see the operations get closer and closer into view. But at this point in time, the astronauts remain seated and in their suits, and the onboard air conditioning keeps temperatures in check inside the spacecraft, and communication systems on board remain powered up. So as we just heard, the crew can continue to communicate.
That's right. And SpaceX has 2 fast boats in the recovery fleet, which have moved quickly to the splashdown point. They're being followed by Megan, as Kate just said, the main recovery vessel, which will move into position upwind of the spacecraft. The 2 fast boats have very specific roles. The first approach is focused on immediate safety inspection of the capsule integrity and checking for any presence of hypergolic propellant vapors, ensuring that it is safe for Megan to approach the Dragon spacecraft. Once the capsule is cleared for full approach, the team begins rigging the capsule for water recovery by the recovery ship. The second fast boat is responsible for parachute recovery.
Dragon, we're complete with 4.800.
Copy, 4.800 complete.
Great, just some more updates on nominal completion of the checklist. As I was saying, that second fast boat is responsible for parachute recovery and also serves as a redundant boat to the first.
And Dragon, requesting permission to come on board via the display camera view only.
Display camera view only.
Yeah, you can come on board.
Copy, and work.
Permission granted from Commander Peggy Whitson there on the net. And then lastly, on the fast boat points, we'll see a team member on a jet ski helping to gather up the now detached parachutes.
Now, it'll take a little bit more than 10 minutes for the recovery crew to complete all those safety checks. And once those are complete, the team will begin preparing Dragon to be lifted into the recovery vessel. As part of the preparation for that lift, one member of the recovery team will climb on top of the capsule so they can attach Dragon's hoist rings and connect the lifting lines. It will take less than an hour to raise Dragon onto the recovery boat and remove the crew from the spacecraft. And then, after medical checkouts, the crew will return to the Cape by helicopter and be rejoined with their families.
That's great. I'd love to have the role of jumping.
Display camera is on board.
I would not like to have that role. I've said it on previous Splashdown webcasts, the individual responsible for jumping into the ocean at night sounds like a nightmare to me. So I have a lot of respect for the individuals that are trained and willing to do that job. It is an important job that is actually a very a highly technical role, as they have to go through a lot of training. Excuse me, and they are also need to be able. Have to know where they are allowed to step. And really how to attach the fittings, as I mentioned before, those hoist points for where Dragon will then be hooked into and lifted onto the recovery vessel. And we can see the Dragon capsule getting closer and closer into view as our recovery vessel, Megan, makes its way to the splashdown site.
Dragon, hypergol sweeps and unfired ordnance checks are nominal. Rigging is in progress. Approximately 25 minutes until capsule lift. Stand by for PMC with SpaceX flight surgeon.
Dragon capsule.
All right, that was SpaceX Core, just letting the crew know that all of the unused pyrotechnics are saved, and that they will now begin to prepare the capsule for rigging. And that PMC that we heard stands for Private Medical Conference, so that will be the opportunity for each crew member to have a private conversation with the flight surgeon, just a quick check-in to make sure that everybody's feeling happy and healthy. We can see those other boats, the fast boats, as well as a jet ski making their way around. They are collecting the parachutes out of the water. And we heard the call out just moments ago that the hypergolic tests, or the sniffs for that, just to make sure that there are no hypergolic fumes around the Dragon capsule, as they are poisonous to breathe. We want to make sure there aren't any there. That's actually our first live view of the backside of the recovery vessel, Megan. We can see recovery members there on the deck of the ship. That nest in the center is where Dragon will end up once we lift it out of the water.
Dragon to ground is now public.
Dragon copies.
Got a better view now of the recovery team there on the right-hand side, making progress with getting the Dragon capsule rigged and prepared for lifting out of the ocean and into the platform there on the left-hand side of your screen. One thing to look out for, given the bright lights, that can attract bugs, which attracts fish, which sometimes attracts dolphins, as we have seen in previous night recoveries. Looks like there's a drone there above the recovery team on the right-hand side. So yeah, we might see some splashing in the water near where the recovery teams are. And we can actually now see there, that view on the right-hand side, the SpaceX recovery team member. Yeah, but now we got a full screen of that SpaceX recovery team member, really visible, climbing on the Dragon capsule. As I said before, this is a highly specialized and trained position within the recovery team, as the Dragon capsule, certain areas are wet as it just splashed down, and they have to ensure that the rigging and the hoist points are attached and secured to the Dragon capsule. The recovery vessel Megan making its way closer to the splashdown site. And it looks like the team on the right, in the recovery vessel to the right, was finishing. You can see there they are pulling the parachutes onto the boat. As I mentioned before, the physical evidence of that re-entry phase now evident, visible, well, not right now, but it will be momentarily, that charring on the charring on the exterior of the capsule on that ablative material, or rather it's a thermal protection system. As the name implies, it helps protect the capsule during that atmospheric re-entry. We can now see the recovery vessel Megan spinning and will begin to back into place towards the Dragon capsule. And for those of you that have just joined us, the splashdown occurred at 11:04 p.m. Eastern Time, 8:04 Pacific Time, right on time. We heard that the weather conditions in this area were outstanding, and that certainly appears to be the case here, as we can see on screen. We can see the recovery team member on the bottom right, directing traffic, if you will, helping to guide the recovery vessel toward the splashdown site. Now, the structure that we see up and above the I thought we were going to get some comms there, but perhaps not. That lift that we actually see above those two recovery team members, that's a hydraulic lift that once we get closer to Dragon, it will actually push out a little bit and basically hover over.
Dragon, be advised, we are transitioning the forward link. Comm will be unavailable for approximately 5 minutes.
Dragon copy. Comm unavailable, 5 minutes.
Good readback.
As I was saying, that hydraulic lift will tip out over the back end or the aft end of the boat and over the Dragon capsule. The recovery team member that is on the capsule will actually receive the lifting harnesses and cables and attach those. We will then see that team member, one of my favorite parts to watch out for in the recovery process, that individual will just jump right off and into the water and will climb aboard one of the fast boats in the area. And in a matter of seconds, that hydraulic lift that we see there will lift and position the Dragon capsule up and out of the water and into that nest that we see there in the center of the deck. And that part really is the fastest part of recovery. And then once the Dragon capsule is in that nest then gets pulled forward, basically kind of under where the camera position is now, and toward the ship's deck. And that's where the SpaceX team and the flight surgeon will be standing by ready to open that side hatch after some more safety checks. And that will be a very exciting moment for the Axiom-2 crew. That will be with the reopening of that side hatch. Now, keep in mind, it's been closed since they took off from planet Earth 10 days ago. That side hatch has not been opened since before liftoff. So reopening that side hatch will be the first breath of Earth air, which in this case will be very humid and salty smelling. That they will have gotten in the last 10 days.
I love how we're still in their mission. In fact, they went through extensive water rescue training just for this moment. The Axiom crews train on the water rescue, and AX2 is no different. They had some pretty extensive water rescue training, so we're still in the mission.
Yeah, so this is a great view. We can really get a good glimpse of the SpaceX team member that is on board the capsule as it spins a little bit there.
Again, I volunteer for that position. Looks fun to me.
Yeah, it's a really tough position to have. As I said, they train a lot for it. And it's tough because they are in a wetsuit. And when you think about it, they are soaking wet when they try to climb up on top of the Dragon capsule. They climb aboard from after hopping in the ocean. So yeah, like I said, they're soaking wet. They are, everything's really slippery. And they have to know exactly where they can grab a hold of to safely do their job.
Pretty amazing to think that just 12 hours ago, this crew was in space, was on the International Space Station, and now here they are, bobbing in the ocean. What a journey for AX2.
Absolutely. I mean, you could even say, even as little as an hour ago, they were still in space in microgravity. Yeah, so we see now one of those guidelines have been attached. We can see them kind of orienting the capsule a little bit. This operation is highly choreographed, although it might look like a little bit of a traffic jam here and there, but it is highly rehearsed, and each team member has a specific, exactly what that job is. The recovery team practices both daytime and nighttime recoveries.
Dragon, forward link transition complete.
Dragon copies.
All right, so it sounds like comms with the crew now restored after they were just transitioning some of the communication links or loops that we have. And so I want to point out the individual that the recovery team member that is on the Dragon capsule is actually standing in the bay where those main parachutes have been housed for the entire mission. So that kind of gives you a sense of how large that storage compartment is and how big those parachutes are. Even though they're packed very densely and tightly, all four of them do fit in.
And with those parachutes deployed, we've lost some weight and cargo in that sense, but we're still coming back with 300 pounds of science to process here on Earth, including our crew members and our fifth crew member, Gigi.
Yeah, one of the things that I've loved about this mission was it wasn't just a focus on STEM, it was a focus on STEAM, which for those that might not be familiar is science, technology, engineering, mathematics, but with the addition of arts, so STEAM instead of just STEM. And as a musician
Dragon,
myself, I certainly...
Approximately 3 minutes until capsule lift.
Dragon copies, 3 minutes to lift.
Okay, the recovery teams are now preparing to lower the vessel's hydraulic lift mechanism into the water to bring the spacecraft into the on-deck translation system known as the nest, as Kate mentioned. Dragon will remain in the nest during the crew extraction and for the journey back into port. The capsule is currently just about to be lifted up, we think. We'll see it here in a second. It will be centered and then oriented on that nest. Dragon will then be translated into the hangar underneath the helipad aboard the ship so that we can open the hatch. And of course, once open, a SpaceX medical doctor will be the first one in to check on the crew to see if they're ready to egress out of the vehicle.
That's right. We can see that recovery team member still working to secure the harnessing to the capsule. Climbing like a highly skilled... And there we go.
Dragon, brace for capsule lift.
Brace for capsule lift.
As I mentioned before, this will happen very quickly. This is one of the most efficient and quickest parts of the recovery process. So don't blink. You can see the fast boat now clearing the way for the lift. That lift now underway. We should now see that hydraulic lift actuate and pull it out of the water. There we go. It's a pretty cool view there of the heat shield on the underside. That's the side of the capsule that was basically facing Earth during re-entry. Those harnesses will now pull the bottom of the capsule, that heat shield, and align it for placement there in the nest. See some water sloshing around the bay where the main parachutes were held. All right, it looks like that has now settled almost into position.
I suppose the last dynamic movement of our cruise journey.
Almost. Once the capsule is placed in the nest will then move forward. It's almost like it grows tiny legs that are invisible and just scampers out of the camera view. But that will be the true last movement of the capsule prior to that side hatch opening. We can see now the recovery team members who you'll note have donned or put on some respiratory equipment. So right now they are plugging.
Dragon, welcome aboard the recovery vessel. Recovery personnel are completing final checks and stand by for translation to the egress platform.
Dragon copies.
So the reason that they're wearing respirators at the moment is that once the Dragon capsule has translated, as we just heard, to the platform on the inner side of the vessel, they will perform some additional hypergolic safety checks to ensure that there are no vapors or fumes remaining. But right now, we're actually just plugging up the thrusters to help ensure that none of those vapors will come out. And that's actually the deck where the Dragon capsule will slide into.
That final translation movement you were talking about.
Dragon slide. So we can see those recovery team members now unlatching the safety cables and the harnesses that pulled Dragon up and out of the water and helped secure it into the position. Now it's hard to see, but we can still see the windows of the Dragon capsule. They're a little dirty at this point, but those are the two circular shapes on either side of the side hatch. And then we can see up above the side hatch is where those drogue parachutes were located. Also where some of that additional safety harnessing that rigging is located. So once all of the service section Draco thrusters have been plugged, they are, and you can also kind of see some of it happening now, they're performing some of those hypergolic sniff checks. So the propellant that Dragon uses is different than the propellant that Falcon uses. Dragon's propellant is monomethyl hydrazine and nitrogen tetroxide, or MMH and NTO. And when they come into contact with each other, they instantaneously combust. So it's a great propellant for when you're on orbit, because you don't need an ignition source, which is good, because generally you don't want ignition sources in space. So these two propellants are great for on-orbit operations, but they are toxic to breathe. So that's why we were taking these extra steps, because Dragon had a lot of those two propellants on board. And even as recently as an hour ago, some of those Draco thrusters were firing. So just ensuring that none of those fumes are present.
I think we saw a thumbs up from someone doing those hypergolic checks as they were walking away.
For those of you that have just recently tuned in, we had a on-time splashdown at 11:04 p.m. Eastern Time, 8:04 p.m. Pacific Time. The Dragon capsule has been lifted out of the water. They landed near Panama City, Florida, in the Gulf Coast. So it's been lifted out. The astronauts, I'm getting ahead of myself, the Dragon capsule in just moments from now will be moved or translated just out of camera view. We have another camera view and we'll be able to see it there, but it'll be slid into position near the deck where the crew will be able to egress from the side hatch. And then once that side hatch is open, that will be the Axiom-2 crew's first breath of fresh air since they boarded Falcon 9 at the start of their mission. Back on May 21st, which was just 10 days ago. So we're now standing by for translation of the Dragon capsule, which will put it into position to open the side hatch after undergoing additional hypergolic checks and spacecraft cabin pressurization. So before opening the side hatch, we have to make sure that the environment inside of the spacecraft equalizes or is the same with the outside environment. So we can just barely make out the recovery team making their final preparations before sliding the Dragon capsule into position. Recovery operations are, to me personally, really fascinating, or I should say re-entry and recovery, because it's a lot of, it goes really fast and then it goes really slow. So, all of the steps departing the International Space Station and we can see that the Dragon capsule is now being translated toward the forward end of the vessel's deck. Once again, this is our recovery vessel, Megan, which services our Gulf landing sites. Another camera view there, seeing it move into position. As I mentioned, all the recovery team members wearing those personal respirators to help ensure that if there are any remaining hypergolic fumes, that they don't come into contact with them, as they are right next to the capsule. beginning to spray down the capsule to try and flush out some of that salt water. All right, we're going to use this ladder to climb towards the top to do some more of those hypergolic checkouts. As I mentioned before, that side hatch is where the Axiom-2 crew will egress from.
Dragon, stand by for side hatch opening and egress.
Dragon, standing by.
All right, we can see the recovery team now taking off their personal protective equipment, or PPE. They can get rid of those respirators as the hypergolic checkouts have cleared. You can really see the the different colors now of the side of Dragon. You know, just a little bit ago it was all white. Now that evidence of re-entry. I always love being able to see the heat shield as the Dragon comes up and out of the water. All right, we can see that the recovery team is now opening the side hatch.
There it is.
This is the first breath of fresh air, in this case, salty air, for the Axiom-2 crew since climbing on board Falcon 9 just 10 days ago. So the first person in is the medical officer doing checks with the crew members to ensure that everyone is doing all right. I see some thumbs up and waving.
See some waving from Rihanna Barnawi there on the left. The first photos being taken there. I think they're getting the seal of the hatch, but glad to see our crew's already waving for their photo op.
So just out of view, there's that plastic. I shouldn't say it's plastic, but I'm not quite sure what it's made out of, but that fixture will actually help protect the side hatch as the crew egresses. So as I mentioned before, we reuse our Dragon capsules. This is actually the second time that this capsule has been to space. And that fixture helps protect elements of the side hatch from damage as the crew steps out. You know, they are coming back from a little bit of time in space, and we want to assure that everybody stays safe. So we will be partially assisting them out of the capsule, but also just helps to ensure the integrity of the hardware.
All right, first view of our crew. AX2, happy waves and holding hands all around. That's wonderful to see. Nearing 10 days on orbit, and the crew is nearly ready to egress through that side hatch.
You can see the team putting that protective fixture in place Also starting to gather the crew's items. Those are the tablets that they wore around their legs. And we can see the folks on the edge, the left-hand side of your screen, following along with our procedures, documenting what is coming out of the capsule to make sure everything is accounted for. The place just helps ensure that the side hatch remains protected while the crew is coming out. They used a similar fixture while the crew was ingressing as well. And that looks like one of the footrests or boot rests coming off of one of the crew's seats. It's helpful to remove all 4 of these just to help get a little extra space inside the capsule. Right, we can see SpaceX recovery members there putting in place the slide that the Axiom-2 crew will utilize to make their way out of the capsule, or egress is exit. Since they've spent the last few days, not couple, last 10 days in space, the effects of microgravity, even for that period of time, can be felt. So to ensure their safety, we will help them slide out of the capsule. But I have a feeling that we'll also see big smiles and some happy waves at the same time. Definitely. Although I could imagine this moment is somewhat bittersweet because they are back home, but that also means that they're not in space anymore. This is a feeling that Commander Peggy Whitson has experienced so many times.
Yeah.
I just love that she was able to extend her record. She's now at 674 days in space, which is just incredible. But yeah, this must be a bittersweet moment, knowing you're home, you get to see your family soon, but the ride to space is now over.
I think I heard Peggy in an interview after her NASA retirement say, she was asked, "What are you going to do now?" And she said, "I'd like to go back to space." And she certainly did. I'm sure the families of our AX-2 crew are eagerly awaiting this moment to see their loved one pop out of the side hatch. And even more so to have them land in their arms and pass those hugs around, do all those handshakes and high fives.
Mm-hmm. We're now standing by for crew egress, where they will make their way out of their seats and exit the Dragon capsule. As I mentioned before, the side hatch, which we can see now open. The last time this was opened was when the crew had ingressed into the capsule. So it was closed and locked prior to liftoff and has remained there. The crew utilized the forward hatch, which is the hatch out of picture right now. It's located at the top, or the forward end of the capsule. And that is the hatch that is utilized to dock with the International Space Station. So all the trips that they did while on the ISS were through that forward hatch that we are unable to see at the moment as it's covered up by the nose cone and just that nose cone out of picture here. Okay, it looks like we might be close to seeing our first crew member.
Yes. Starting to see our first crew member egress from SpaceX Dragon vehicle. Who is that? Is that?
I think that might be Peggy.
That does look like Peggy. Commander Peggy Whitson seems to have egressed the vehicle.
Pretty impressive that she was able to, she had assistants standing up, but, basically just walked right off. That's really impressive.
I'd say her vestibular system is pretty well trained at this
point. Really set the bar high for everyone else coming after her. I wouldn't want to do that. All right, we got legs of our second crew member.
If they're removing from the center, I'm going to wager that it's our pilot, John Schaffner, but we will see.
Generally speaking, it is easier to have the two crew members in seats 2 and 3. So generally the commander and the pilot egress first.
Right. And that does look like our pilot, John Schaffner.
So at this point in time, 2 of the 4 Axiom-2 crew members have egressed from the capsule. Standing by for egress of our 2 mission specialists. Now removing the footrests of those 2 other seats. Once again, this helps to make some additional room to move around and climb out. Or rather, slide out, I should say.
And actually, on the right there is Axiom's flight surgeon, our lead AX2 flight surgeon, Michelle Hong, assisting our mission specialist.
That looks like Rayana.
Rayana Barnawi, egressing a Dragon capsule. Little help up.
Yay! Nice little photo opportunity.
A little celebration right there.
Again, super impressive to me that these crew members are just walking off after being helped up. So now with Rayana having exited, all that's left is Ali Al-Karni, our other mission specialist, who was sitting on the far right-hand side.
And our flight surgeon, Michelle Hong, will actually be accompanying our crew all the way back to Houston, keeping an eye on them the whole time. See the feet now of our final crew members starting to egress the hatch, through the hatch. Ali Al-Karni making his egress from Dragon Freedom. Pausing for a little photo there. That's great. Well, this crew looked like all smiles coming out of that capsule.
And now that our crew are safely back home on Earth and getting the first checkouts by our medical team on board, we're going to wrap up our live coverage of their historic return. For those of you that didn't have a chance to follow along, the AX-2 crew lifted off from Launch Pad 39A on Sunday, May 21st, and arrived at the International Space Station about 15 and a half hours later, which marked Dragon's fastest launch to docking time for a human spaceflight mission. They spent a total of 10 days in space, 8 days on the ISS before undocking just over 12 hours ago. And more recently, at 8:04 p.m. Pacific time, they splashed down off the coast of Florida at Panama City, just in time to celebrate 3 years of human space flights for SpaceX, marking 3 years since the launch of DM2.
That's so great. And what an incredible journey this has been. Next up, they'll catch a helicopter flight back to shore, where they will transfer to a waiting aircraft ready to take them to Houston. While this concludes the flight portion of the AX-2 mission, much of the research portfolios that were performed on station will continue to be reviewed and analyzed. Some of their studies will even continue over the coming days and months. Well, Kate, it has been an absolute pleasure sharing this desk with you, and both for the launch of AX-2 back on May 21st and now Splashdown today. So to SpaceX, thank you for an incredible flight and taking such great care of our crew. And to all of you watching, it's been an honor and a privilege to share the journey of Peggy, John, Ali, and Rayana to space and back again. As we bring this mission to a close, we celebrate how the AX-2 mission is demonstrating that the opportunities presented in microgravity are moving beyond the partners of the ISS to include more countries, institutions, industries, and individuals than ever before. This is how Axiom Space is expanding access to low Earth orbit and building history, as we like to say. Be sure to check out axiomspace.com as we continue to pursue new commercial opportunities for human spaceflight. I'm Duke Brady here with SpaceX's Kate Tice, and we're signing off now with a final welcome home to the crew of AX-2.
Thanks to you, Duke, as well as everyone else for joining us, and we'll see you soon.